Rick and Morty has taken us on some wild adventures throughout its 8-season run. From multiversal threats like Evil Morty and Rick Prime, to the crazy antics of Mr. Meeseeks and all the weird stuff in between, there are a lot of great episodes to pick from. Narrowing it down to just 10 was no easy task. But today, we're counting down the top 10 best episodes of Rick and Morty, in my opinion. Close Encounters of the Rick Kind is one of the most important episodes in Rick and Morty's entire run. It introduces two of the show's biggest recurring elements, including Evil Morty and the Citadel of Ricks. The Citadel of Ricks is an entire society made up of Ricks and Mortys from across the multiverse. While Evil Morty would go on to become the main antagonist of the series and a fan favorite for many people, including myself. Both of these plot points would go on to appear in many future episodes and stand out as some of the best in the entire series. Even though Evil Morty barely appears in the episode himself, his influence is everywhere. Working behind the scenes, he manipulates the entire events of the episode, setting the stage for his grand plan. The story begins when Rick is framed for the murders of countless other Ricks and brought in by the Council of Ricks. After our Rick and Morty escape, we discover that evil Rick and Morty have orchestrated the entire conspiracy. Morty is captured, Rick's memories are scanned, and all seems lost, until Morty proves his worth by leading a revolt of captured Mortys. Evil Rick is literally torn limb for limb by the horde of Mortys, but the story is not over yet. In one of the show's best plot twists, we discover that Evil Rick is just a robot being controlled by none other than Evil Morty himself. He slips into the crowd of Mortys and vanishes, leading fans to speculate about his intentions and whereabouts for many years to come. This episode also marks the first time in the series that Rick and Morty's relationship is truly tested. We learn that Rick uses Morty as a cloaking mechanism to hide himself from the government and Citadel, essentially turning him into a shield.
Ricks have a very distinctive and traceable brainwave due to our genius. The best way to hide from an enemy's radar is to stand near someone with complementary brainwaves that make ours invisible. See, when a Rick is with a Morty, the genius waves get canceled out by the, Morty waves.
Morty is very understandably angry and calls him out on it, and his anger is completely justified. While most Mortys are portrayed as naive sidekicks, our Morty has repeatedly shown he's far more capable and self-aware. At the end of the episode, Rick even admits that a Morty with a big ego can be dangerous, without realizing that he's been outsmarted by one this entire time. I'm happy to say that the subplot of this episode is equally memorable. While the main story unfolds, a team of Ricks set up base at the Smith household, where Jerry befriends Doofus Rick, arguably the kindest Rick in the multiverse.
It was your idea. Come here, Jerry.
Unlike all the other Ricks, Doofus Rick never had a Diane in his life, which means that he never became jaded or broken after her death. Doofus Rick is just a genuinely sweet and really nice guy, and that's really refreshing to see in a show that's often so nihilistic and depressing. His unlikely friendship with Jerry is genuinely one of the most wholesome things in the entire show, and it's a shame we haven't seen him return since. Closer Encounters of the Rick Kind has everything you could ever want from Rick and Morty. It's hilarious, action-packed, and has some of the best lore reveals in the entire series. This is the beginning of Rick and Morty's overarching story, and makes for an unforgettable experience. Hot Rick is one of the most emotional episodes of the entire series, and serves as a fitting conclusion to Rick's character arc. Back in Season 3, we were first introduced to Diane, Rick's deceased wife. Later in Season 5, we met Memory Rick, a copy of Rick that existed inside a bird person's mind and eventually inside of Rick's own memories. Fast forward to Season 7's Jarek Trap, where Rick and Jerry's minds get scrambled together and Memory Rick ends up inside of Jerry's mind. From there, he begins altering Jerry's memories, convincing him that Rick was present during all of Jerry's most important life moments. Eventually, Rick captures Memory Rick and traps him inside of a containment chamber. This experience pushes Rick to finally let go of his grief for Diane, something he's carried since the very beginning of the series. After avenging her and unmort Rick starts dating Bug Ann, one of his old Resistance allies, and makes the painful decision to delete his final memory of Diane. But Memory Rick refuses to let go of her. When Beth accidentally uploads him into her own head, chaos quickly erupts. Memory Rick begins rewriting her childhood memories, training her to sneak into Rick's garage and steal the memory of Diane. But before she can, Space Beth intervenes, leading to an intense confrontation between the two Beths. And when I first watched this episode, I was utterly shocked. My jaw was on the floor. I honestly thought Space Beth died right here, but thankfully Rick comes in and revives her pretty easily. As Beth's mind begins to fracture from the overload of altered memories, Rick and Space Beth fight to pull her back.
I'm so confused, Space Beth. I hear so many voices. I remember loving my dad and then hating my dad.
In a rare moment of compassion, Rick actually steps up as a father and takes accountability for what he did and manages to talk Beth down.
Your real dad is here, Beth, and he's more emotionally open.
He erases her memories of the ordeal, choosing to spare her the pain. Towards the end of the episode, Rick tells the rest of the family that he destroyed Memory Rick and Diane. But this is far from the truth. The episode ends with Rick secretly allowing them to live happily together out in space. An incredibly bittersweet ending to the story of Diane. This episode beautifully brings Beth's character arc full circle. Early on in the series, she was incredibly abrasive and egotistical, and I honestly found her to be quite insufferable. But over time, especially after the introduction of Space Beth, we've seen her evolve into a more empathetic and self-aware version of herself. Her desperate attempt to hold on to the last memory of her mother is both tragic and deeply human, showing just how far she's come since Season 1. At the same time, Hot Rick delivers the long-awaited resolution for Rick's grief. Diane has always been the key to understanding Rick's pain. The trauma that shaped his cynicism, alcoholism, and nihilism all stemmed from her death at the hands of Rick Prime. He finally avenged her in Season 7, but that vengeance never healed the wound. The only thing that truly brought Rick peace was choosing to let her go, allowing a version of himself and Diane to live on while he continues to move forward with his life. For a show that built its reputation on dark humor and wacky sci-fi situations, this episode stands out as something truly profound. It's a tragic yet hopeful ending that shows us that even Rick Sanchez can grow. Season 2 is Rick and Morty at the height of its comedy, and the Ricks Must Be Crazy might just be the funniest episode in the entire show. The episode kicks off when Rick's car battery dies, but of course, it's no ordinary battery. Inside the battery lies an entire microverse, a self-contained universe where inhabitants unknowingly generate electricity for Rick's car. They power their world using Google Boxes, a device that feeds energy directly into Rick's battery. But things get complicated when Zeep Zanflor, the microverse's top scientist, invents his own microverse to power their world.
Fine. It's hard for people to grasp, but inside that container is an infinite universe with a planet capable of generating massive amounts of power. I call it a miniverse.
Dumb!
Meanwhile, outside the battery, Rick's ship has one simple directive: keep Summer safe. The results are disturbingly hilarious, as the ship takes this command a bit too serious. The ship goes as far as to traumatize, maim, and even psychologically manipulate anyone who comes close to it.
I'm sorry. It was all my fault. I'm sorry.
Daddy, leave the car alone.
What?
Leave the car alone.
Hunter, go!
Oh my God!
Go stay here, Hunter, no! God, no! Hunter!
It's one of the darkest yet funniest subplots in the entire series. And generally speaking, most of the subplots in Rick and Morty are very hit or miss. But Summer's storyline in this episode is just as great as the main plot is. It might even be better, honestly. It's the perfect balance of absurdity and pitch black comedy that the show has become known for. But for me, the real highlight of the episode is the rivalry between Rick and Zeep. Zeep is by far one of the most underrated characters in the entire series, and he's brilliantly voiced by Stephen Colbert. He's one of the few people capable of matching Rick's intelligence and arrogance, and their constant back and forth makes for some of the best banter in the entire series. The second half of the episode ramps up the stakes as Rick, Morty, and Zeep end up trapped inside of a teenyverse with no way out. Morty grows tired of their arguing and finally snaps. It's one of the few moments in the early seasons where Morty actually stands up for himself, and it shows just how much he's grown since the pilot.
Crafty son of a...
I crafted the guy that created the planet you're standing on.
Yeah, and I made the stars that became the carbon in your mother's ovaries.
I didn't ask to be born.
All right, that's it. I'm out. I'm gonna go into the wilderness, and I'm gonna make a new life for myself among the tree people.
But it's actually thanks to Morty that Rick and Zeep are able to escape, as he forces them to work with each other with the help of the tree people by his side. The climax is pure gold as Rick and Zeep race to escape the mini-verses. It also contains some of my favorite gags in the whole episode.
Run, Morty! That asshole's willing to risk everything he cares about just to defeat me! He's psychotic! Morty, hop on my back! Why? Go, Sanchez ski shoes!
That one gets me every time. The episode culminates in a hand-to-hand fist fight between Rick and Zeep, and I just love how raw and realistic this fight scene is. No gadgets, no tech, no lasers, just two geniuses beating the crap out of each other with their bare fist. As the series has gone on, it's become increasingly rare to see Rick fight without his tech, so this was honestly a really nice change of pace. It reminds us that at the end of the day, Rick really is just a human, despite what he might tell you otherwise. As far as Rick and Morty adventures go, this is an absolute classic in my book.
Ew, what the hell? Jesus, there's flies in my ice cream!
Presidential decree. All ice cream is now for all beings, no matter how many legs.
What the fuck did you do, Summer?
It was your ship! Your stupid ship did it!
Don't blame my
It
ship!
melted
My
a
ship
child!
doesn't do anything
I
unless it's
killed
told
it
to do
itself!
something!
We
I don't even want
almost-
to hear it, Summer!
Moving on from one of the funniest episodes of the show to one of its darkest, Unmort Rickon stands as a brutal and emotional turning point for the entire series. The episode opens with Evil Morty's origin story, revealing how he overpowered his own Rick and seized control of the Citadel. From there, we follow his life beyond the central finite curve, the multiversal barrier introduced in Season 5 that confines Ricks to realities where they're the smartest beings alive. And outside of that boundary, pure chaos reigns. The universe is full of unimaginable cosmic horrors where logic and physics barely exist. But surprisingly, Evil Morty is living his best life. However, that peace doesn't last for long. Rick and Morty begin hunting down all the remaining clones of Rick Prime, leading Evil Morty to check in on what they're doing.
What the fuck are you doing? Oh shit! Evil Morty! Should I grab the net?
Yes! Hang tight, Morty's getting the net.
One of the clones is rigged with a trap, leading them into a deadly battle arena filled with other Ricks, all out for revenge against Prime. And Evil Morty completely steals the show here. His sharp dialogue and confidence make him one of the most compelling characters in the entire series. And thankfully we get a lot of great interactions between Evil Morty and our Rick and Morty, leading to both a rivalry and mutual respect between the parties. And then there's Rick Prime, who finally makes his long-awaited appearance after years of build-up. Ian Cardone delivers a chilling performance, portraying Rick Prime as the perfect embodiment of every single thing wrong with Rick as a person. Yet he manages to balance out the character by giving him a level of charisma that makes him undeniably charming.
Like your car?
I can see why you hate him.
And she sounds like our wife. Like in a fucked up robot way, but that's definitely her voice. You sentimental little fella.
It's an episode full of emotional moments, great lore reveals, and some of the best action in the entire show. And it all ends in a final confrontation between Rick and Rick Prime. This scene is forever etched into my memory for how violent and brutal it is. It's one of the most visceral moments in the entire series, but it's also deeply satisfying as a longtime watcher of the series.
You would have been me. I just walked into your garage before you walked into mine. But eventually, you did. You lived in my house.
It's an amazing episode, but if I had one complaint, it would be how fast everything happens. After 6 seasons of build-up, Rick Prime's arc ends just as soon as it began. I expressed my frustrations with this in another video, so if you want to go hear my in-depth thoughts, check out that video in the link below. But to summarize my thoughts, I think this episode feels a bit rushed overall. However, the impact of his death and the emotional fallout that follows more than make up for this. Despite the victory, this isn't a triumphant ending. It's a tragedy. Rick finally gets the revenge he's been chasing for years, but when it's over, he's left with nothing. His entire purpose is gone, leaving nothing but an empty and broken old man. The closing moments echo Rick Potion number 9 from Season 1. It's a devastating moment as Rick reflects on everything that he's lost. The same song from Season 1 even plays over this scene, Look On Down From the Bridge by Mazzy Star. Unmort Rickon is a beautiful blend of action and emotion. It's a brutal finale that brings the Rick Prime and Evil Morty story arcs full circle. An incredibly tragic yet powerful and unforgettable episode that easily cements itself as one of the best in the entire series. Me Seeks and Destroy, the 5th episode of Rick and Morty's first season, marks what I consider to be the beginning of the show's golden age. The first 4 episodes did an excellent job establishing the tone, characters, and sense of humor of the show, but this was the first time that the series truly fired on all cylinders. Me Seeks and Destroy combines brilliant sci-fi concepts, sharp comedy, and genuine emotion to make a fan-favorite episode. This is the episode that introduces Mr. Meeseeks, one of the most iconic and creative ideas in Rick and Morty. Up until this point in the series, most episodes were parodies of classic films or genres, but Meeseeks and Destroy was an entirely original concept. Meeseeks are creatures that are summoned to complete a single task, after which they instantly vanish. But when that goal becomes impossible to achieve, their very existence becomes pure suffering. There's a bit of an inspiration here from the indie comic Scud the Disposable Assassin, about a robot designed to self-destruct after completing its mission. Both stories explore what happens when a being that is created to die keeps living instead. The main difference being that while Scud chooses to live, the Meeseeks beg for death.
I can't take it anymore! I just want to die! We all want to die! We're Meeseeks!
This storyline also gives Jerry one of his best early arcs in the show. With Rick and Morty off on their own adventure, Jerry is forced to take responsibility and solve the problem by himself, something that we rarely see from him, especially this early on in the show. It's a small but meaningful moment of character growth for Jerry, and I love to see the guy get a win every now and then. Meanwhile, the Rick and Morty subplot takes the story in a much darker direction, and this is something that is still discussed within the fandom to this day. Morty insists on leading an adventure for once, wanting to prove to Rick that he can do things his own way. But Morty's adventure quickly unravels as him and Rick are accused of murdering a giant. But that's not the part that everybody talks about, as something much more disturbing happens later on in the episode. I'm going to avoid showing the scene here, and I'll keep my discussion on it very brief, but it's a very important part of the episode that I wanted to talk about. Morty is attacked while alone in the bathroom by a character named Mr. Jellybean, and it's a very difficult scene to watch. Thankfully, the scene is handled with an unexpected level of maturity and restraint. Unlike most adult animated shows, Rick and Morty doesn't play it for shock value or humor. It's portrayed as something horrifying and real, exactly like it should be. I don't want to dwell on it more than I have to, but I have to give props to the show for handling it with so much care. But it's also a moment of growth for Rick. He spends a majority of the episode making fun of Morty's adventure, but he eventually lets loose and begins to enjoy himself. It all comes together when he silently realizes what happened and later kills Mr. Jellybean. It's one of the few early moments that shows just how much Rick truly cares for Morty. And it even ends on a good moment for Morty, as Rick agrees to let him pick every 10th adventure that they go on.
I, Morty Smith, invoke my right to choose 1 in every 10 Rick and Morty adventures. Read them in week. Fucking damn it!
The balance between absurd comedy and realism is what makes Me Seeks and Destroy such a special episode. On one hand, it's a hilarious episode that gave us one of the show's best side characters. On the other hand, it's a turning point that grounds Rick and Morty in reality, proving the show can be far more than just crude humor and nihilism. It's no wonder fans still regard Me Seeks and Destroy as one of the best episodes of the series. It perfectly captures the blend of humor, creativity, and heart that defines Rick and Morty at its best. The Rick Shank Redemption opens Season 3 with an explosive comeback. It's one of Rick and Morty's most exciting and well-paced episodes to date. Picking up right after the heartbreaking cliffhanger of Season 2, Rick is now in the custody of the Galactic Federation. We get some massive lore drops here. Rick's supposed tragic backstory, the return of the Cronenberg dimension, and the return of the Citadel of Ricks, who are now hell-bent on killing C-137 once and for all.
Hi, Rick. Bye, Rick.
This episode marks the beginning of Rick's transformation from a brilliant but flawed scientist into a god. And it works perfectly in the context of this episode as the stakes are at an all-time high. Rick's intelligence feels like a weapon of mass destruction as he hacks and manipulates his way through the Federation's systems. The result is one of the most satisfying action climaxes in the entire series. Rick single-handedly dismantles both the Galactic Federation and the Citadel, eliminating all of his enemies in one fell swoop.
But watch closely as Grandpa topples an empire by changing a 1 to a 0.
Once he returns home, everyone welcomes him back, except for Jerry, who preferred life without Rick. And this moment sets up one of the show's most important arcs, the Smith family divorce, which defines much of Season 3. But what makes this episode truly special is how it balances out the massive scale with humor. Despite the huge universe-shifting events and emotional revelations, it's somehow one of the funniest episodes in the entire series. This is probably the peak of Rick's characterization in the show.
In 1998, they had this promotion for the Disney film Mulan, where they they created a new sauce for the McNuggets called Szechuan sauce, and it's delicious. And then they got rid of it, and now it's gone. It's the only place we're gonna be able to try it. It's in my memory.
Rick, you're doing this bit while your brain is melting.
Okay, all right.
The writers found that perfect balance of nihilism, brilliance, and the witty sense of humor that Rick is famously known for, and it makes for an endlessly charismatic performance. I also talked about how this episode was the first to ever introduce Rick Prime and Diane into the story, so I'll keep it brief here. That was another huge mystery in the series that fans speculated about for years after the episode aired, and eventually it would be confirmed in Season 5's finale. The Rick Shank Redemption isn't just a great comeback episode. It's the episode that proved Rick and Morty could dominate pop culture while still delivering incredible storytelling. And I thought there was no better way to kick off the top 5 episodes of this list.
Idiot dumb Morty. What an idiot! What a dumb Morty!
Who's stupid now, bitch?
Fear No More, the Season 7 finale, is in my opinion the best Rick and Morty season finale. Season 7 focused heavily on Rick's hunt for Rick Prime and the emotional fallout from that arc, often leaving Morty in the background. But this episode finally gives Morty his moment in the spotlight, and it's one of the most meaningful and heartfelt stories in the entire series. Rick and Morty stop by a Denny's where a mysterious fear hole has appeared in the bathroom, and things take a dark turn when both of them fall in. Once they enter the fear hole, they encounter Diane, Rick's long-lost wife.
Rick? No. Oh my god, no!
This sets up a fascinating moral dilemma for the episode. Morty wants to escape the fear hole while Rick gives in to the illusion, desperate to spend more time with the woman he lost, even if she isn't real. This is one of the few times in the series that we actually get to see Diane on screen, and as a longtime viewer of the show, it feels earned. Even though she's technically just a creation of the fear hole, created to manipulate Rick, her characterization feels real. She's sharp, witty, and confident, clearly the kind of person that Rick would have fallen in love with. Their chemistry is amazing together, but it's also heartbreaking as Rick accepts to let her go again by the end of the episode.
Tell you what, old man. Seems like losing me made you cooler. I should die more often.
You did. You died everywhere. Forever.
But Morty's story is really the highlight of this episode. His jealousy towards Diane isn't just about Rick ignoring him. It's about the fear of being replaced. He begins facing all of his fears in a hilarious montage, trying to break free from the fear hole's grip. Morty has to confront the possibility that Rick doesn't care enough to save either of them from the fear hole. We watch as Rick's body decays throughout the episode, the fear hole eating away at him. But eventually, Rick snaps out of it and leaves Diane behind, with the two seemingly escaping. But in true Rick and Morty fashion, the episode keeps throwing us fake-outs until the final gut punch reveal.
I'm afraid that if I jumped into a hole, you wouldn't even bother jumping in after me. You'd just stand there and watch. This entire thing has been about me. You're not even in the hole, are you?
Rick never entered the fear hole at all. Everything we saw was happening inside of Morty's mind. Everything we saw was Morty's deepest fear brought to reality. That Rick doesn't love him enough to risk his own life for him. It's a perfect example of how Rick and Morty blend science fiction and emotion without sacrificing either. Fear No More is a brilliant character study disguised as a trippy sci-fi adventure. And for anyone who doubted the series' ability to thrive after Roiland's departure, this episode is proof that Rick and Morty is still at the top of its game. Total Rickall is another monumental moment in the franchise, widely regarded as the funniest and most creative episode of the series, and it's easy to see why. Most television series use bottle episodes, small cast in one location, to save money. Rick and Morty says to hell with that, using their bottle episode to introduce the largest cast of characters that the series has ever seen. The episode kicks off when Rick dumps the glowing rocks he was seen stashing in Morty Night Run into the kitchen trash can. These rocks contain parasites that invade the Smith family's memories, slowly taking over the house. It all starts with Jerry's older brother, Uncle Steve, who Rick immediately sees through and shoots on the spot. But things quickly spiral out of control after that.
Steve wasn't real? He's a real piece of shit.
Rick seems on top of his game, counting the real Smiths carefully. But he overlooks Mr. Poopy Butthole, a goofy character who randomly appears and becomes one of the most iconic elements of the episode. And one of the best details of this episode is how he's animated into the show's intro as if he's always been there. Soon, the entire household is overrun with wacky side characters who claim to have always existed in the family. Each parasite is introduced through cutaway gags, something that Family Guy popularized back in the 90s and early 2000s before eventually running into the ground. But here it actually works because it's both crucial to the story and hilarious. We get a ton of unforgettable characters like Pencilvester, Ghost in a Jar, and Tinkles, who are just absolutely ridiculous in the best way possible. And the second half of this episode is somehow even better. Morty realizes that the parasites can't create negative memories, giving the family a way to fight back. What ensues is an amazing shootout where the Smiths eliminate all the parasites while remembering the worst memories that they have of each other. My favorite part has to be when we get a montage of all the times that Rick screwed Morty over. And the twist at the end of this episode is unforgettable. As the Smiths sit down to have dinner, only 6 people remain. The main cast, plus Mr. Poopy Butthole, who somehow survived the shootout. At this point, we're all under the impression that he's a parasite, and so is Beth. So she makes the right call and shoots Mr. Poopy Butthole.
Oh my God! Oh fuck! Oh,
Wait, but
Beth, why?
I need an ambulance.
We've talked about how well Rick and Morty is at crafting plot twists throughout the story arcs of the show, but this is on another level of genius. In my opinion, this is the funniest moment in the entire series, no competition. Total Rickall is the peak of Rick and Morty's comedy and creativity. This episode proves that the series can take the most overused writing tropes and still turn them into something fresh. And I can easily see why it's considered to be the best episode by many people.
$149.99 on sale, plus every time you buy one you get a $50 gift card, brings the total price down to $110 after tax. Now listen, we can flip those sons of bitches for $230 a piece, easy! They're all limited edition Zelda ones. Hurry! Hurry, come with me! We can be rich and we also all get to keep one and we can play Nintendo games.
Choosing between my number 1 and 2 was tough, but I ultimately landed on the Ricklantis mix-up at number 2. From my YouTube polls, my audience considers this to be the best episode of the entire series, and for a long time, I did too. The episode opens with Rick and Morty gearing up for Atlantis, only to be interrupted by a Rick and Morty from the Citadel. They explain that they're rebuilding the Citadel after its destruction in the Season 3 premiere, but Rick and Morty have no interest, and that's when the true title of the episode is revealed. Tales of the Citadel. The rest of the episode, we follow multiple ongoing storylines within the Citadel, each focusing on different variants of Rick and Morty. First up is Cop Morty and Rookie Rick. This is my personal favorite of the 4 stories. They patrol the Morty part of town, which is full of Rickless Mortys, and eventually get tangled up with the mob boss Morty. The storyline ends in an intense shootout where Rookie Rick is forced to kill his partner Morty.
I want to be a regular kid. I want to go to school and throw balls around and masturbate.
This storyline serves as a commentary on police corruption, which is something I never thought I would see from Rick and Morty. After presumably being pushed around by Rick's his whole life, the cop Morty has become just as corrupt as they are and abuses his position as a police officer. It's a very unique and interesting take on Rick and Morty's dynamic, and shows how Mortys are also susceptible to Rick's nihilistic nature. Next up are the 4 graduating Mortys. As their graduation comes up, these 4 Mortys embark on a coming-of-age journey reminiscent of Stand By Me. By the end of the journey, they reach a wishing well, and the leader of their group, Slick Morty, sacrifices himself by jumping into the well. His dying wish was for the divide between Ricks and Mortys to change. A bittersweet moment of hope in an otherwise brutal episode. And then there's Factory Worker Rick. Inside the factory of a wafer cookie company, Simple Rick is trapped inside of a machine that constantly replays his favorite memory, celebrating Bev's birthday. The factory worker Rick, who is frustrated by corruption and injustice, takes Simple Rick hostage, demanding accountability. This storyline is really interesting because it portrays the mundane life of a Rick who, despite his genius intellect, is treated with very little value and respect. He's seen as no different than any of the other countless Ricks living in the Citadel, and that makes for a really compelling conflict. All of these stories converge around the Citadel's presidential election, which drives the main narrative of the episode. The candidate Morty, who is initially mocked by the Citadel of Ricks, delivers a powerful speech promising to eliminate the social divide between Ricks and Mortys.
From the Ricks and Mortys that believe in the Citadel, to the Ricks and Mortys that don't. You're outnumbered.
In a surprising turn of events, he wins the election, but his campaign manager attempts to assassinate him. You may be wondering why his campaign manager attempted to kill him, and once we get to the final reveal, you'll see why. The Citadel of Ricks assure President Morty that they still control everything. And then, some familiar music starts to play.
Well, I think it's important to be clear. Raise your hand if he speaks for you.
President Morty has all the opposing Ricks killed as he begins to give a chilling speech about change, order, and power.
But speeches are for campaigning. Now is the time for action.
We see all the Ricks and Mortys who died throughout the episode floating in space, and then an image of evil Morty appears. President Morty is evil Morty from Close Encounters of the Rick kind. It's one of the most haunting moments in the series and instantly established evil Morty as a massive threat. The Ricklantis mix-up is a masterpiece and still remains the highest rated episode on IMDb to this day. And that brings us to number 1, the Vat of Acid episode. Surprisingly, I didn't enjoy this episode when it first premiered in 2020. I didn't fully understand what the writers were going for, but with each rewatch, it climbed my rankings, eventually taking the top spot. The episode opens with Rick and Morty meeting alien smugglers to trade crystals in a location oddly littered with vats of acid. When the deal falls through, Rick jumps into one of the vats of acid with Morty. This vat is revealed to be one of Rick's inventions, a fake vat of acid with a compartment of bones at the bottom. The smugglers question the logic and morality of the vat, which eventually leads to Morty losing his patience and opening fire.
Up already!
On the ride back, Rick and Morty have an intense argument in which Rick is genuinely hurt by Morty's harsh words. Despite Rick's nihilistic nature, it's clear that he cares about Morty's opinion. And Morty just absolutely rips into Rick for this invention, which he believes to be the dumbest one that he's ever made.
Vat of fake acid? Are you dying of dementia?
How are you talking to me like this? When did you get so cocky?
Tonight!
When they get back home, Morty bets that Rick can't make the invention he's been begging for, a button that saves and resets your point in time like a video game checkpoint. Rick begrudgingly accepts Morty's challenge and builds the device. Morty starts by testing the button on Jessica, and after a successful trial, Morty spirals into chaos. In a nearly 5-minute montage, Morty commits several crimes, pulls cruel pranks, and experiments without consequences. It's truly the most sadistic showcase of Morty's personality that we've ever seen. It becomes obvious that if Morty had no consequences in his life, he would be an absolute monster. But the montage takes an emotional turn when Morty meets a girl outside of a coffee shop. They begin a relationship and go through all the ups and downs of real life, culminating in a plane crash that leaves them stranded in the snowy mountains. The survivors are forced to do some truly horrific things, resorting to cannibalism. Morty contemplates using the rewind button, but ultimately perseveres, finding a way to call for help. They're rescued and everything seems to return to normal, but then tragedy strikes again. Jerry mistakes the rewind button for the television remote, undoing everything Morty just endured in the montage. Morty becomes trapped in a loop of pain and frustration, unable to fix the meaningful relationship he just lost. And this moment is a perfect example of the dark humor that defines Rick and Morty. In any other series, this would be treated like a tragedy, but in Rick and Morty, it's comedy gold. Finally, Morty admits to Rick that the rewind button was a bad idea.
I definitely sowed those oats, but I think you invented a little lesson for me along the way. Living without consequences is great, but then I started wondering, what am I living for? What am I building? If I'm always looking back, I'm never looking ahead. And then it hit me. We are who we are because of consequences. You can't live without consequences, you know? You feel me?
But in another brilliant twist, Rick explains that nothing was actually reset. Every time Morty used the button, he swapped places with another Morty from across the multiverse, killing them. Suddenly, everything Morty did throughout the episode takes on a new horrifying weight.
That's right, you little bitch. It's the prestige. You prestige
Rick,
yourself.
how many did I
You
kill?
tell me, Morty.
Rick merges all the timelines, and the military and angry mobs arrive outside, demanding Morty be held accountable for his crimes. With no other options, Morty uses the fake vat of acid sitting outside, and finally submits to Rick. The Vat of Acid episode is the absolute peak of Rick and Morty for me. It takes a simple sci-fi concept like time travel and turns it into something devastating, darkly hilarious, and tragically profound. The twist reveal is a masterclass in storytelling, forcing viewers to reevaluate everything we just watched. Rick and Morty's dynamic is on full display as Rick's desperate need for validation clashes with Morty's growing independence, creating a perfect roller coaster of an episode. And it doesn't just test Rick and Morty's relationship, it tests everything about Morty as a character. Rick basically turns Morty into a monster once he hands him all the power, and only by stooping to a new low can he remind Morty of who's in charge. It's the most diabolical episode of Rick and Morty ever made, and for that reason it's my favorite in the entire series. And there's my ranking of the top 10 episodes of Rick and Morty. Even on its 8th season, Rick and Morty continues to push the boundaries of storytelling, comedy, and science fiction. It's not only one of the most clever cartoons out there, but just one of the best shows in general. And I'd love to hear what you thought about this video down in the comments below. And feel free to share your favorite episodes of Rick and Morty. And with that, I'm signing out. See you guys in the next one.